In 590 BC, an Egyptian priest of very great age told a Greek statesman, Solon, an incredible tale of ancient empires, natural catastrophes, and a great Atlantean war. Quote, "This power came forth out of the Atlantic Ocean, for in those days the Atlantic was navigable, and there was an island situated in front of the straits, which are by you called the Pillars of Hercules. The island was larger than Libya and Asia put together, and was the way to the other islands, and from these you might pass to the whole of the opposite continent which surrounded the true ocean. For this sea, which is within the Straits of Hercules, is only a harbor, having a narrow entrance, but that other is a real sea, and the surrounding land may be most truly called a boundless continent. Now, in this island of Atlantis, there was a great and wonderful empire which had rule over the whole island and several others, and over other parts of the continent. And furthermore, the men of Atlantis had subjugated the parts of Libya within the columns of Hercules as far as Egypt, and of Europe as far as Tyrrhenia. This vast power, gathered into one, endeavored to subdue at a blow our country and yours and the whole of the region within the straits. And then, Solon, your country shone forth in the excellence of her virtue and strength among all mankind. She was preeminent in courage and military skill, and was the leader of the Hellenes. And when the rest fell off from her, being compelled to stand alone, after having undergone the very extremity of danger, she defeated and triumphed over the invaders, and preserved from slavery those who were not yet subjugated, and generously liberated all the rest of us who dwell within the pillars. But afterwards, there occurred violent earthquakes and floods, and in a single day and night of misfortune, all your warlike men in a body sank into the earth, and the island of Atlantis in like manner disappeared in the depths of the sea. For which reason, the sea in those parts is impassable and impenetrable, because there is a shoal of mud in the way, and this was caused by the subsidence of the island. Plato, 360 BC.
In the 1880s, the search for Atlantis would take a new turn, and then take the world by storm. But it would come from a most unlikely source. Ignatius Donnelly was a maverick of his time. A businessman by training, he spent one term in the United States Congress before losing a bitter re-election campaign. He was convinced, as Plato had said, that it was buried deep in the Atlantic Ocean, where it held the key to all of civilization. In 1882, the publication of his book, Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, riveted the nation. Translated into many languages, it outsold all other books and set off a worldwide mania about Atlantis. Donnelly believed that all the world's mythology and history, even art and architecture, sprang from one common source. Could it be that all the great utopian myths, even the Garden of Eden, represented a universal memory of the single great land, Atlantis? Researching his subject in meticulous detail, Donnelly claimed that all the kings and queens of the world's great mythologies were in fact the lost royalty of Atlantis. He claimed that the Greek god Atlas, who carried the world on his shoulders, was one and the same as the Mexican Toltec god Quetzalcoatl. Both, he said, were variations of an ancient Atlantean god. In Donnelly's theory, even the concept of pyramids, both Mayan and Egyptian, sprang from Atlantis.
And he said, well, if there are pyramids in Egypt and pyramids in the Americas, The pyramid, the idea of the pyramid, originated on Atlantis. And when the people left Atlantis, some went to Egypt and took their pyramid ideas with them, and some went to the Americas and built pyramids there.
They both had the same astronomy, they both had the same calendars. There's a Mayan, one of their leaders, leaving from a volcano and going out into the sea, which is the same story that Plato told about Atlantis.
The story of Atlantis also became fundamental to a growing interest in psychic phenomena and spiritualism that was sweeping the world at the turn of the century. At the forefront of this movement stood a strange and enigmatic figure, Madame Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. She was born in Russia in 1831. It was said that as a child, she talked with spirits in her sleep. As a young woman, she traveled the globe extensively. According to her, the Atlanteans did exist, but they were only the third of 7 root races of mankind, their predecessors being a race called the Lemurians. Millions of years ago, she said, the Lemurians had also sunk into the sea in one of many worldwide floods. Echoing this belief, and the story of Noah in the Bible, even Plato wrote of a recurring cycle of natural disaster,
We have this kind of collective memory, if I can call it that, of a worldwide flood.
You wonder if there's an advanced race, since we have these fossil evidence for it, groups with larger brains than us. There are a couple different types of big-brained fossil creatures that have been found in the very, very recent past, say the last 30,000 years. Okay, one is called Cro Magnon. That was very human-like, actually had a significantly larger brain than modern humans. Unbelievable information. That's fall down on the floor, amazing information, okay? That trashes everything the evolutionary theory people have been wanting to talk about. What do we have here? We have some sort of huge head and presumably ultra-massive brain that was all over the world, and apparently some cultures like the Mayan worshiped them in the recent past. This is unbelievable. This is incredible information. Why is it not on all these news stations? I mean, this is unbelievable. Is this the Elohim? Or some extraterrestrials? Is it another just kind of human that was around? What relation do they have to us? Why were some ancient religions worshiping these people? Were other ancient religions worshiping these people? We have to get to the bottom of this. This information is it's the most powerful information. If you want to know who you are, that gives you power, and this is the kind of information that can help you do that.
What fascinates me on this planet is the diverse, many different races we have here. Is it because of environment and locale, or are these all... I've always thought about this.
The more we look at the different race groups on planet Earth, we call ourselves the human race, but we're not one race. We're distinctly several different race groups. And that becomes very interesting and often a very sensitive subject, but something that needs to be discussed openly without racial prejudice and so forth. So it becomes more and more compelling. The evidence becomes overwhelming that we did not really evolve to this point in time. This cradle of humankind that is being sold to the world doesn't have any human skeletons in it. We have hominids in there, Australopithecus africanus and Mrs. Bless and Littlefoot, and wonderful examples of over 500 fossils that have been excavated from the Sterkfontein caves, just sort of northwest of Johannesburg. over 500 fossils, if I've got it right, but they're all hominids, no human skeletons there. So these are all the supposedly pre-human evolutionary states. They are not human. This has become a very hot political debate in South Africa because some people believe that you've become a racist and you're drawing racial lines. And it's got nothing to do with that. You've got to call it what it is. You've got to call it as you find it. You can't start becoming politically sensitive to one group or another.
No, this is anthropology.
Not enough time has passed for these different race groups to have evolved. The strength of the gene pool of Africans defies the movement away from that into somebody like me who's got a little pale skin and gets burnt when I run into the sun. You know?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense, and there's not enough time that has passed on Earth for us to have evolved so dramatically into these 3 or 4 distinctly different race groups. And that's why when I said earlier we call ourselves the human race, well, we're not really the human race because we are not one race group. We are 3 or 4, possibly more, distinctly different race groups. But the obvious ones are the Caucasians, the Asians, the Chinese. I suppose when I say Asian, I mean the Chinese type look, and then the black African, and that is fascinating stuff because it becomes a melting pot of debate.
We talk about just how we evolved on this planet. Robert Sepehr does a very thorough job trying to coordinate all the various people who are talking about this, and it's growing, I think. It's growing, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Is there a racial difference in the degree of prognathism? Prognathism means the forward position of the jaws. And yes, there are variations between the different races. You'll find that people living in more primitive environments, by and large, tend to have their jaws further forward. People who live in highly civilized and industrial societies generally eat a much softer diet, have weaker muscles, and their muscles aren't as far forward, they're further back.
Since successfully sequencing the modern human genome of several different human races, geneticists have determined that all non-Africans have roughly 1 to 5% DNA from Neanderthals. Now, using saliva tests, scientists have found that another different non-human species contributed genetic material to the ancestors of black Africans living in sub-Saharan Africa today. The research adds to a growing body of evidence suggesting that sexual rendezvous between different archaic hominin species were common and the reason for the various ethnic and racial groups we have today. Past studies have concluded that the forebears of modern humans in Asia and Europe interbred with other early hominin species, including Neanderthal and Denisovans, and now this new research is among more recent genetic analysis indicating that ancient Africans also had trysts with other hominins not considered part of the modern human species. Dr. Omer Gockerman, PhD, Assistant Professor of Biological Sciences at the University of Buffalo College of Arts and Sciences, says, and I quote, "It seems that the interbreeding between different early hominin species is not the exception, it's the norm. Our research traced the evolution of an important protein that is found in saliva," he says. "When we looked at the history of the gene that codes for the protein, we see the signature of archaic admixture in modern-day sub-Saharan African populations." The research was published on July 21st, 2017 in the journal Molecular Biology and Evolution, and the study found that a group of genomes from sub-Saharan Africa had a version of the gene that was wildly different from versions found in other modern humans. The sub-Saharan variant was so distinctive that Neanderthal and Denisovan genes matched more closely with those of modern humans than the sub-Saharan did. Professor Gockman goes on to say that, and I quote, "Based on our analysis, the most plausible explanation for this extreme variation is archaic introgression, the introduction of genetic material from a ghost species of ancient hominins. This ghost human relative could be a species that has not been discovered, such as a subspecies of Homo erectus or an undiscovered hominin. We call it a ghost species because we do not have the fossils." End of quote.
Scientists have made a shocking discovery. Many modern-day humans are walking around carrying archaic DNA. Those of European or Asian descent, roughly 1 to 5% of their genome comes from Neanderthals.
So we are Neanderthals.
In special clean labs like this one at UC Santa Cruz, scientists can extract Neanderthal DNA from tiny bits of fossilized bone.
It is an amazing thing that we can get DNA out of our ancestors that are now extinct.
Professor Ed Green runs the paleogenomics lab. He says advances in technology allow experts to quickly sift through and locate ancient DNA.
We have fantastically fast machines.
How did this mashup occur? Chalk it up to prehistoric hanky-panky. We carry traces of these encounters in our DNA.
And they affect our health in many different ways.
Some Neanderthal and Denisovan genes boost our immune systems and protect against infections. Others increase the risk of depression, skin problems, allergies, blood clots, even diabetes. A few unusual variants help some of us adapt to extreme environments.
It could be the high altitude in Tibet, or it could be the very cold environment around the Arctic.
Professor Rasmus Nielsen at UC Berkeley headed up a study that discovered how modern Tibetans carry a gene from these archaic humans. It regulates the molecule that carries oxygen in the blood and allows Tibetans to survive more than 3 miles above sea level.
When they breathe, they only get about 60% as much oxygen.
Professor Svante Pääbo is a founder of the field of paleogenomics. He and his team have sequenced the entire Neanderthal genome. As to why?
We want to find out more about our origins and our history.
Neanderthals were once considered brutes, clumsy and stupid. Remember those Geico commercials? So easy a caveman could do it?
I think that view is really changing.
Back in Gibraltar, meet Nana and Flint, forensic reconstructions of a female and child Neanderthal found here. We now know our ancient relatives had a sophisticated culture, adorned themselves with feathers, buried their dead, and as seen in one cave, even etched art. Suddenly, they disappeared. Now that scientists have the complete Neanderthal genome, they want to look for all genetic changes in modern day people, changes that might hold the clues as to why we survived.
Hybrid animals have long existed in the imagination, from the beast of Greek mythology to the creations of modern-day science fiction. But they also exist in real life in some rather unusual combinations and in some rather intimidating ones as well, as Vicky Mabry now reports.
This big guy is a liger. Yes, a liger.
900 pounds and 12 feet tall. He's a gigantic kid because he's a liger. Father lion, mother tiger makes him...
Father is a lion, mother is a tiger.
Makes him the liger.
That's a good boy.
Good.
For all you non-believers, they really do exist.
What are you drawing?
A liger.
As we learn from the film Napoleon Dynamite.
What's a liger?
It's pretty much my favorite animal. It's like a lion and a tiger mixed. Bred for its skills and magic.
The Napoleon Dynamite phenomenon made an awareness about ligers, which made people have an interest in the natural world. It made a unicorn come to life.
Unicorns are mythical, but hybrid animals are very real. What is a mule if not a combination of the horse and the donkey? Very common. But a liger?
He's got these stripes and spots that are all over him that some young lions have, but they fade away. In him, he has more of a tiger pattern to his head of stripes that's got some spotting in the middle of it.
He doesn't have a mane.
He doesn't have a mane. It's more like a tiger. But in many ways, he is just kind of 50-50, and it's a blend. It's not one trait and another added together.
These mixes happen naturally, Doc says, not through artificial insemination. Naturally in a nature preserve, but not typically in the wild.
In the wild, lions and tigers don't cross territory, so it's not a thing that there are wild ligers, although there are many wild hybrids. Wild wolfins have happened, where there are whales and dolphins.
Wait a minute, a wolfin? The Sea Life Park in Hawaii is home to what they believe is the only known wolfin in the world. Keikaimalu is the daughter of a false killer whale and a bottlenose dolphin. And there are more. The kama. One half camel, one half llama. The wolf dog. That one's pretty obvious. And the beefalo. The combination of a buffalo and a cow. And these are the shapely striped legs of a zebra, right? Nope. This is a zorse. Half zebra, half horse.
This is just a mule of a different color.
Boyd Biggs raises zorses and zonkies, or z-donks, combination zebra and donkey, outside Fort Worth, Texas. He breeds and trains these unusual-looking creatures for riding and working around his ranch. George Amato is an evolutionary geneticist at the American Museum of Natural History.
Hybrids that are created between good species because humans bring them together and let them reproduce do not fit into the natural order.
Is he a freak of nature?
I don't consider them a freak at all because it's a naturally occurring process.
But why create these exotic species? Antle views them as wildlife ambassadors.
Hybrids have a place. In present day, their real place is awe and wonder, which I hope leads to an interest in the natural world.
The liger is a hybrid cross between a male lion and a female tiger. Female ligers are not sterile, but rather they are highly fertile. A female liger can reproduce with both a lion and a tiger. Therefore, it's incorrect to associate sterility with ligers. That said, humanity is a hybrid species, and though the child mortality rate was much higher thousands of years ago, viable offspring survived, and the hybridization process which created modern man still takes place today. My name is Robert Sepehr. I'm an independent anthropologist. Please consider making a donation to Atlantean Gardens, the nonprofit organization that helps make these educational videos possible and that publishes my books on Amazon.com. Thank you to those who share these presentations. I rely on word of mouth and appreciate all of the positive feedback. So leave a comment, share, and I will see you next time.